Hello again, everyone, and welcome back for another conversation with Jim today. We wanted to dive in and talk about the rays of creation in addition to what we already talked about before and expand on some of these other rays. So, Jim, welcome in.
Vida, nice to see you again.
Thank you. Let's start with kind of ray 7. This is a bit of a mysterious ray. We don't talk about it too much in the work, but could we dive in and start there?
Yeah, actually, let's take one step back here to do this. The rays are tools. These are creations of code. Now, this word code is beginning to be in everybody's reality because of AI or because of the new programs that are being written. So everything's written in codes. So you're basically doing new programs. So you have a lot of people learning how to write code. So that context has not been in the average person's awareness as it's now beginning to be. So these rays are basically strings of code that are about creating patterning that allow for the creation of everything to happen. And each one of the rays has a construct of code that allows you to do multiple things. There's overlap in some of these codes, but there are more than 10 rays. There's more than 12 rays. There's multiple rays that are created that are constructs to allow you to do something. So there are the first 3 rays are basically where everything comes from. So the will of the creator, that the color and love and light in the second ray, it allows you to step things up and step things down, change the energy frequencies. You only want a little bit of salt in your brownie mix. You don't want a pound of salt in your brownie mix. So you modulate it up and down to basically get to the place where I accomplish what I want to accomplish. So second ray. Third ray is on one hand a little bit more complex to explain because it's all about the mechanics of putting things together, the electricity, the magnetism, the adhesion. How do you put things together? And much more, but just simply. Then you begin to say, well, what do you want to accomplish? Here's your components of creation, very, very full and unending. They have so much in them, those 3 rays, that you begin to pick and choose what is it that you want to create as a creator being. And so you take a little bit of 2 and a little bit of 3, and you always align it with 1, and you go about things. And then you create something. And so then that construct that you created begins to be a pattern that becomes available for the next person to use as a foundational piece of their creation, if that makes sense. So you've got lots of configurations. It's like taking the number 1 at the top of the pyramid, and then you add 2s, and there are 2 2s, and then there's 3 3s, and there's 4 4s. And how do you mix up all of those pieces to accomplish what you want? Keep that real simple. So, but these basic 10 rays where we're playing allow you to begin to understand how to recognize yourself, how to clear away a lot of the baggage that we have created. So we've created patterns, anger. Well, all of a sudden you get to a certain point and you realize anger doesn't really support me. So there's one of the rays that allow you, 4th ray, that puts the configuration that we'll call it anger for the moment in place so you can use it for your purpose. Creator never says, universe never says good or bad. You say, this makes me really angry and I'm going to be angry for a long time. And the 4th ray says, no problem. And it just cements anger and holds it there until you say, okay, only kidding, or I no longer need this. And 4th ray says, fine, unravels it. So just one of those rays. when it came to the seventh ray, and actually the seventh ray has been available from the beginning, or almost the beginning of creation. The seventh ray has multiple purposes, but one of the purposes is that allows you to move your attention from one pattern to another, one dimension to another, one planet to another, one universe to another. It simply is the vehicle that allows you to move from one place to another as a spiritual being. And so, but what happened, so now we'll start with the seventh ray. So what happened with that seventh ray is when all the creator gods were excited about all the creation that they were doing, and remember the creator gods had the full will of the creator given to them without any conditions. They were what the creator was. What happened is the creator gods got so excited about all their creations. In one hand, they stopped engaging with that first ray, the will of the creator. They just kind of went and created and said, look at what I did. Really positive. Look at what I did. And got really enamored with what they were doing and really begin to forget maybe, or just be so excited about what they were doing, they didn't check in with the creator and say, because we are one, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think, creator? In a manner of speaking. That had no problems to it all the way to the fifth level of density, where we call fifth dimension. Once it started to drop into a heavier density, fourth dimension of thought, and then into the third dimension of physicality, the density got such that vibrations that were okay in the fifth, sixth, seventh dimension, let's say something that didn't work in the fifth, sixth, seventh dimension, you would just go, oh, that didn't work here. Let me back that out, rearrange it, put it back in. But when you got into that fourth dimensional space of thought, all of a sudden there was a density, a vibration, we'll call it an emotion. Remember, we've kind of said this is not true, but emotions have edges: anger, rage, resentment, feelings, joy, ease, gratitude. We're just conceptually no edges. Now, that's a concept, not a truth. And so, but when it got down into that fourth dimensional space and then into the third dimension, it began to be very sticky. And that third ray, that magnetism got really pretty tight, or the gravity, which we don't talk about much, but is really a key to everything, began to get so tight that you couldn't get out of your creation. And so the mutations, the distortions, started to begin to be scripting patterns that defined what the fourth and third dimensions became. Does that make any sense? I'm angry, I'm enraged, I'm jealous, and all of a sudden those became patterns that domination, imposition, better than, greed, I don't like you, so I'm okay to kill you off. All of that began to lock into place, and over time, it just simply began to be how it was in the third and fourth dimensions. So those mutations, those patterns, that coding, is where we're stuck in 3D and 4D.
So can I bring in this into maybe a silly analogy? It's kind of like the rays you're saying are like the software programming. So if I were writing a story, I can change the font, I can make it bold, I can do different things in rearranging. And this third dimension, we've kind of lost the delete key. We can't quite back up, be like, I don't like that word, let's take that out. The delete key is now like stuck and no longer functions.
Perfect analogy. It's all the software coding. And so we get so in, we can't look, we can't step back, take a breath, get in the present time, and just we ask ourselves, oh, this isn't working well for me. What is my other choice? You watch the world, watch yourself, think about yourself. Growing up, how many times did you feel jealous or feel put down or whatever it is. And then how long did you run it through your mind? They don't like me. They don't like me. They don't like me. But see here where we're playing now is we start to begin to have more awareness. And this is where these tools, like we talked about the 4th, 5th, 6th rays, we talked about the 8th ray, tools to basically step back and say, this isn't working for me. Let me just unravel that and then substitute something else here. It's just like you said, let me change the sentence, change the word in the sentence, change the sentence in the paragraph, change the paragraph in the chapter, and all of a sudden you have a very different story unfolding going forward.
And I think that's an interesting analogy to take forward with the 7th ray, right? This is kind of the return break. You're kind of in this world, in this spot, in this concept, and then it's a return break. Okay, now I'm going here. Is that kind of a good way to describe that?
See, as you back out of that, I'm not okay and I'm angry and 3rd, 4th dimensional stuckness, then you're just rearranging the pieces on the table to create the picture you want. Now, this is where the 7th ray, because you're not stuck in emotions and you're also not taking those emotions with you to another part of the universe that isn't encumbered by them. And so one of the things that would happen is these great beings, avatars, ascended beings would come and they would shapeshift. They would have their experience. One of the really exciting things they said at the very beginning was you could become a rock. It's like, whoa, this is really cool. They could become anything. That's how they were coming to these densities. But when we'll have another conversation about doubt and, another time. But what happened is there are beings that are still in rocks. I mean, great beings, according to Metatron and others, that basically were playing there. And then they were told, as simple, and think about this in your own reality, is you're not good enough to get out of that rock. You can't do it. You're not able to do it. And a doubt was created, a mutation, a distortion. There are beings still stuck as rocks. Sounds weird, but it's accurate. So let's go back, though. So one of the things, that 7th ray was the vehicle that allowed you to come into form, experience any form you wish to create, and then leave the form, go back into whatever state it is of non-physicalness you wanted to play in. But what would happen is all of those mutations, those distortions, we'll call them anger, rage, resentment, jealousy, imposition, that was sticky in that 3rd dimensional space, a 3rd ray space, how it would get so sticky. Glue is one, electricity, magnetism, electromagnetism, adhesion. And so what would happen is they would leave, but they would take their 4th, 3rd dimensional vibrations with them and wind up contaminating another place that never had been contaminated. And this went on for a long time. And so there's a whole big story around all that for another day. But effectively, what was determined is we need to create a structure that allows each being to kind of decontaminate themselves. And that structure was the 8th ray. And see, so we've used the 8th ray of creating and destroying and taking the strings of thought out of our personalities. It's even bigger than that, but basically it gave you an opportunity to simply remove all of the debris. I'm not okay, and I'm angry, I'm jealous, and come back to a balanced state of love. And then use the 7th ray to go wherever you're going to go.
Can I bring in one more analogy here that I just think is so fun? It's a bit like a reset. In fact, I think like 90% of the problems you have on your phone or your computer where things just go weird, you're like, what is this? You just, a solid restart cleans everything off the table, and then off you go in the direction you go.
Yep. Perfect. So one of the things about the 7th ray that was created is the violet consuming flame of light. It's in the 7th ray. And so it was this space of basically decontaminating. So you'd use the eighth ray to kind of unload yourself from, I'm really angry about. You get out of that space, and then you'd step into that violet consuming flame, and it would just simply clear away virtually everything at that point. Plus, you'd begin to be very clear that you and the Creator are one, and you bring your attention into that oneness, and you'd go to wherever you wanted to go outside of the third and fourth dimensions, fifth dimensions. So that seventh ray has other valuable components to it, but the pieces for us as humans where we're playing is really that vehicle to come and go, and that ability of using that violet consuming flame to become kind of pure in the nature of the light, and then be able to go where you want to go.
Can I deconstruct this just a little bit? So whether I'm using my phone analogy or me, right? So I've got this anger, rage, resentment. I'm ready to get rid of it. All right, eighth ray, bringing it in, cleaning my space out, hitting the reset button. When I go to make my next move to be like, okay, this feels good, I'm ready to move on to my next thing. Is that where the magenta ray comes in? I'm like, okay, here comes magenta. I'm loading into magenta, and then I move into the seventh ray and can reset? Or you're saying that the magenta is really inside the seven, and that's just part of it?
Magenta ray is a little different than this violet consuming flame. Similar, but different. So that violet consuming flame basically just clears everything out. Now, the thing is, where people are listening to this, it is not about just like, oh, cool, I got a piece of information. Eighth ray, clean all this crap out. I'm going now to ascend. Yeah, good luck with that. It is clearly an understanding and an intentional application. It's not a whimsical, throw it up against the wall and, oh, I'm sure this will go and work. It's not complicated, but you can't take your baggage and your belief systems into this at the level we're talking about ascending. And ascending, let's just basically you as a spiritual being, having had played the game on the earth in this lifetime. And I'm not talking about dying, but it's similar. It's like, I'm going to take a breath now, and I'm just going to step out of the body and go home. It's like you get off of work and you say, okay, that was an interesting day. I'm going to go home now. It's really no different than leaving one experience, stepping into another experience. But you can't drag your baggage along with you into this space. So again, that was why the eighth ray was created, to give you the room to really deconstruct all of the I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm not worth anything, all of the doubt. The last thing in that process of going home or ascending, evolving, whatever you wish to call that, keep it really simple, is the removal of doubt and self-judgment. As long as you can be convinced that, well, maybe you're not that good, or maybe you're not that attractive, or maybe she doesn't like you as much as you think. And you go, what? You're caught in the doubt. So how do I get out of doubt and self-judgment? It's really the eighth ray decontaminating all the I'm angry and I'm never going to talk to. And so you start to unravel, eighth ray, all of the contamination. And then you get very quiet in present time, and you become more commanding of your presence, more gracious, more sense of certainty, capable, all the fundamental pieces of level 2. And then you're able to get quiet enough to recognize the energy patterns to step into, to have your own ascension. Or just let's call it simply leaving into a space that I wish to go. Now, the other part of it is you can come and go all day long. And you do in a lot of ways. People go out of their body, they come back into their body. It's the same mechanism, but a little bit more evolved to basically step out of the body at this level.
I like how the simplistic nature of it. I think I experience it, or we experience it very much in our lives every day. Whether, hey, it's morning, I brush my teeth, I get ready, and I have breakfast. Okay, now it's time, return break, go to work. Here's what I'm doing at work, return break, it's lunch. It's like these constant kind of shifts of almost present time. You're like, here's where I am, here's where I'm going. And it's kind of a step into your next movement. So, and I think what you were alluding to earlier is interesting about how you said, you can't just eighth ray it and off I go, woo, and I'm set, and now I'm return breaking, because of what you were explaining, the doubts, or kind of the what, or the question marks, the hesitation that's really subtle that sits in there. It makes it a little bit trickier. So we have a habit of doing, right? So we go in, we're like, okay, eighth ray, do this. Okay, now I need the magenta code, or now I need the fire consuming light, and now I'm, you can pull into whatever, but then it's more an observation. Is like what you're doing is you're watching and paying attention to, I'm now aware of these new patterns that are showing up in my space. It's not something you can force or apply this, slather it on, and off I go.
Yeah, so these are codes. These are all coded structures. And so they're all patterns. And it's like building with blocks on the table. There are certain alignments for creating the construction you wish to create. You don't build a building on top of a ball. It just doesn't make sense. So the coding structure is what you begin to align with. And so in other words, if you're going, hey, I can do anything and throw it up against the wall type thing, you're not aligned with the vibrational frequencies that are within the code that gets you the result. So why one of the pieces of mastering alchemy you hear over and over, quiet, present, and aware. And once you start to realize I'm present and it's quiet and I'm being aware of being right here, now I can basically say, eighth ray, what is the vibration that gets me to the next step? And so you begin to play, and this is where the mastering alchemy is so valuable in terms of, we talk about words and the vibration of the words. What's the word you're wearing? How does anger feel as a dress to wear all day long versus how does respect or kindness or laughter feel all day long? And so when you begin to get yourself aligned, the application of the rays begin to be keys to the door, and everything just simply happens. So it's not just a whimsical process, and it's not a rational mind process. It's a very mechanical process of creating and orchestrating energy vibrations.
That was beautifully said. I kind of just underline it. Wow.
There you go.
That's so good. I want to ask another question a little bit about the seventh ray. In some ways, for me, a return break is like a conclusion. Like, we're going to be complete. Sometimes you'll say that, right, here we are, we're complete. We're going to pause and set this right here. The seventh ray, can you use that in the same type of an application? Sometimes like thoughts that play over and over, you can eighth ray it, clear it out. All right, here I am, a bit of a reset.
The answer is probably going to be yes, but I'm going to say no.
Okay.
And because what you're really wanting to do is you're wanting to create an alignment that allows you to step into that, let's call it room, seventh ray room. Well, just for a holding place. And so it's all about you being able to step into that space. Now, remember, this one is about leaving fully conscious, not just dying and then stepping into your soul and oversoul in that whole space, and then kind of reawakening to, well, I've always been the soul. This one is where you are fully conscious and you just simply, it's almost like you appear in another room and you can go back to the room you were in a minute ago as if there was nothing interrupted. It's like you walk from your living room into your kitchen and you go back into your living room. that's an activity. That's a intentional action. I'm going to walk into my kitchen. You don't think it because you've done it so many hundreds of times. The body just kind of says, okay, go here. But when you really ask the question, how is it that I can walk into that other room? What am I thinking? What do I do? We do it so unconsciously, but what is it that allows you to do that? When you start to play at that level of understanding, why did I just think to turn my head? Now you're beginning to be at a place that you can start to recognize how to organize the energy and the keys to the doors.
That is a great response to kind of how you can really become even more aware than just slathering on the rays. It's really watching and being conscious of everything that you're doing and how you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
kind of in this teeny tiny details of being aware of every thought, right? When we talk about every emotion, what Kuthumi had said. So how in this masterful creation point of kind of what we're all working towards is how I can into the effortless creation. The ninth ray has a big deal here with sound. Can you talk a little bit about how that plays out, and especially with how it's playing out now?
So sound is really very much the essence of all creation in terms of this physical space. So the sound when you organize electrons into atoms and atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, there is a vibration that allows you to organize the electron into the atom. Keep it really simple right there, not deep. It's like tuning your radio to become more clear, rather than getting the static, you're able to really tune it in to get, now I'm on the channel that I want to be. And it's perfectly, I can hear everything I want to hear. So what happens is sound vibration is noisy until you make it right. If you think about the science of cymatics, for example, it's, if you know about that, I mean, you lay sand on top of a metal plate, you hook up two wires to it, and you begin to run sound through the metal plate, and there's sand laying on top of the plate. And all of a sudden, the sand starts to vibrate and jump around. No big deal until you all of a sudden hit this perfectly aligned vibration of sound, and you see these geometric figures show up. You see these hieroglyphs from Egypt show up. It's like a whole language shows up, but it's in the sound vibration at that level of purity. And so when, again, you begin to be more masterful, and there are many people on the planet because music and sound and singing are so who we are as beings, there's people who start to really play a sound. You listen to a great singer that can just bring it right into an alignment, and what you see is basically the creator. You're hearing the sound, but you're feeling, and it's like, whoa, that's amazing. What you're seeing is what's inside the sound, not the sound. That's where you find yourself in love at that moment with whatever that sound is. You just go, whoa, this is amazing. I'm in love. I'm matching that sound, and the sound and I are one. That's a very magical place to be able to become that masterful. And again, let's go back to the seventh ray. That's the kind of mastery that we're talking about in order to simply get so purely aligned, you can just step out of the body. But if there's a lot of wobbles in that, the key doesn't fit the door.
If you had a recommendation to someone who loves sound and is playing with sound a lot, what would you suggest to them in playing with this ninth ray? What are they doing, or an idea, a thought for them?
So in music, it would be find the 1-2 beat. Find the heartbeat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Once you put a 1, 2, 3 in it, there is a little bit of a wobble. The 1, 2 is perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4 is perfect. And so start to find some of those. they're starting to find some very interesting things that the human ear can only hear to 16 hertz. But when you start to listen to sound at 5 hertz, and music that is in alignment with alignment, and you can pick it up at 5 hertz, you hear what's inside the sound at 5 hertz, the cellular structure of the body goes into an alignment. And in the healing level of sound at that 5 hertz level is beginning to blow a lot of people away. I mean, people come in with cancer, they walk out the door without the cancer. So
I think this is a really good point to bring out as well. Even if you're not a musician or you don't feel like you're a very musical person, or sound is everything, right? As I understand it, that's how all of physicality is kind of structured and put together. While we don't like actually hear it everywhere, we're quite masterful in kind of working and kind of creating with frequencies or sound.
Yeah. So frequencies, in real terms, you don't hear frequencies because they're just kind of these pure flows. What you hear is vibration. So when two frequencies rub up against one another, they create a sound. And the sound can turn into an utterance, and an utterance can turn into a word, and a word can turn into a concept, and a concept can turn into an idea. And each one of those is using the sound tone to create an awareness that creates a thought, that creates an idea, that creates a concept, that create something created. If you were able to take your creation, let's say you build a chair, and you are able to know what the sound vibrational structures of the frequencies are for the chair, and you just change it, the chair would simply disintegrate right underneath you. So virtually everything that's physical within your reality is made of sound.
I think my favorite example that many people have seen is, especially in physics classes all over the US, is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. When the frequency of the wind going across the bridge and the earth shaking to just right, that the whole thing, they call it galloping Gertie, moves. And that was all based on sound.
Harmonics.
So it might be interesting to bring in the 10th ray at this point and kind of how those things and the sound is kind of created. Could you tie that into this conversation?
I can, but let me add one more piece for everybody playing and mastering alchemy. And there's an aspect in level 2 where we bring in the El Shaddai. Now, that's huge. That's an aspect of the Holy Spirit. And so it's not something to minimize, but you get into an alignment with that vibration of the El Shaddai, and everything goes into a harmonic resonance. Your ability to create, and your ability to, it's like I just said, you get into the sound vibration and the frequency, and you get into the harmonics at 5 hertz. Everything that's disharmonic falls away, and there becomes a harmonic resonance that everything in the body basically aligns to. El Shaddai is very much in that configuration, and you start to play with it, and it has amazing possibilities for everybody just to begin to discover.
Okay, so is it similar to the 4th aspect of time?
Well, the 4th aspect of time is not something that is a conscious awareness of most anybody on the planet. Okay, so the 4th aspect of time is something that it was time to bring that into an application for all of you playing and mastering alchemy particularly. And the purpose was not unique to mastering alchemy as some special piece of information. It was for you to begin to recognize the application of this thing called 4th aspect of time and start to play with it, because you at that level are in such an alignment of where there's no doubt. You remove doubt in that 4th aspect of time, and you start to create this vibration that ripples through humanity. So that's an amazing tool. But again, it's one of those things you just don't go, oh yeah, fourth aspect of time, I got it. Everything's going to work and my world's coming to me. I'm now going to be rich. Doesn't work that way. But once you understand how to play with the fourth aspect of time, and it's really something where it's going to start to be more available for people playing in level 2, whereas it was a mastery class piece of information that's now starting to resonate where everybody in Mastering Alchemy is thinking, not to preclude anybody else, because you all are just vibrating it and the whole planet is vibrating it. So it's a somewhat of a newer concept that allows you to bypass a lot of the noise, the doubt, the self-judgments as you begin to play with this. But I think that's something for another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much inside there. I want to go back a little bit, though, before we go too far on the El Shaddai. So the El Shaddai, I'm understanding it, is like the organizing. It's the bringing everything into a harmonic frequency. So everything just kind of works and everything else just kind of lets go, which is kind of similar how we've talked about the fourth aspect of time, which is kind of why I brought that up in similarities. So would it be that the El Shaddai is in more response to sound, like it's using more sound frequencies and waves, even though the function is somewhat similar to the fourth aspect of time? It's just in a very more physical way in which that's applied.
I would explain it a little different. The El Shaddai is a heart frequency. And when you begin to get aligned with the El Shaddai, I mean, it's just the intention of it. It's like stepping into the most magnificent garden you've ever seen. And it's like, whoa, that's amazing. You instantly are one with the garden that you're looking at. At that moment, you no longer remember you were angry or you had a problem. It was just like, whoa, this is amazing. El Shaddai. And so when you start to begin to step into that elegance, or graciousness and power, it's amazing power. It's like commanding the wind, El Shaddai. And you can basically start to swirl it and direct it and move it. And it's very potent as an energy vibration, but it's gracious. It's not a power to destroy. It's a power to expand. And it's a power that is, it's like recognizing electricity, or it's recognizing you don't want to put your hand on the stove when the flame's on. It's just one of those, got it. It's not a power to be abused, because it will do nothing to you except it will just simply be unavailable, just short circuits. But when you start to get in a resonance with it, it is a very, like I said, it's an aspect of the Holy Spirit. And you start to have this heart resonance, and that heartbeat, that 1-2 heartbeat begins to simply, it almost feels like it starts to go into a different 1-2 patterning. You change.
That makes sense. It's a movement, it's motion, it's power, it's the ability to shift and change and move. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for the clarity on that.
Sure.
So can we pull in the 10th ray then, and how we organize or bring things from physical to non-physical here?
Yeah, so let's define it. The 10th ray is massive, very electromagnetic. It is about being able to draw from non-physical into physical. It's being able to kind of take an awareness that turns into a thought, that turns into an idea, that turns into a concept, that turns into a tangible creation. Now, that process is what happens all the time. And so there's an awareness, a thought, and you begin to add density to it. Well, 10th ray moves from non-physical into density. And so in the process, the first particle of physicalness is the electron. And so electrons are pure love with it's almost undifferentiated light that is in pure love. And so you draw that electron from non-physical into physical, but once it hits physical, it's exposed to everything in the physical space. So if you start thinking in anger, it will come in and start to resonate the construction you wish in anger. So, you get people that just get really upset, and then they get vicious and they get vindictive and they start to swirl the pot. Same electron, just being conditioned, operative word, by the mutations, the emotions, the distortions of thought, turning into an idea, turning into a concept. I'm going to get you. And it's driven from very erratic vibrations that are not in love. So, but once that particle of love gets into physicalness, it does what you created because you drew it in from pure, undifferentiated light love into creation. You're the creator being, and it will do what you tell it to do, even though it's in violation to its own nature of love. And eventually you watch everything that's not in love destroy itself. It just cannot continue. You'll see it basically die. And once it dies, it just goes back into unconditional light and undifferentiated light. And everything with the thought process stays in the third dimensional creative process.
So is it possible to say that the 10th ray, where exactly is that used? Because it takes time from something to go from, let's say, just the energy. You're like, oh, there's something there. I don't know what it is. To, oh, it feels like. To, oh, I'm aware of. To, oh, I want to create this. To, so there's a lot of layers that happen in between here and there. Is it active through the whole process, even down to where, like, now I'm angry and I've got to throw my cup at somebody or something?
Have you ever watched somebody go into spontaneous reaction to something they've heard or they thought, or they just instantly just fly off the handle and enraged? That wasn't there a moment ago. So it's not something that takes a long time. And somebody who is in complete joy and all, or they're sitting there and it's like, oh, I just got an idea. What was that? The idea in that level of recognizing it and kind of being fascinated by it just moves very quickly from an awareness to a thought to an idea to a possibility. It's like, oh, we could do that. I never thought of that. Instantaneous, non-physical into physical. You became aware of a possibility and drew it into your reality. So it happens instantaneously. You may not deliver it instantaneously, but it's all instantaneous. So think about it. If you did not have doubt and anger and rage and you were able to simply be in joy all the time, this begins to be a mechanical process of manifesting instantaneously.
So if you're wanting to work with the 10th ray, is it even something that you put intention into? You're like, all right, I would like to create an apple today. How, there is some focus in that state versus I'm just having an awareness of the apple.
Well, somewhere you have already thought about the apple. You wanted an apple. You've had an intention of the apple appearing. And all of a sudden something says, oh, we could do it this way. So you are getting the satisfaction of your intention. Everything starts with an intention, and then it's a matter of your attention on the intention. And so if you hold attention on your intention, that particle is already in motion into the satisfaction of your intention. We just get in the way of it and don't pay attention to it, even though it's bumping us in the nose more often than not.
Oh, that is interesting. So it's kind of both at the same time. So it's both kind of, oh, I want this. And then as you kind of are figuring out how you want to receive it, or it's coming into more form, it's your attention, where it is, and how well you're crafting that to come into form that matters, or that is happening. So it kind of happens without you in some ways if you're not paying attention. But if you're kind of more paying attention and aware, it
Yes,
can just flow.
exactly. I mean, where the whole Apple story came from is the man that sat down next to me at a diner having lunch, and we instantly get into a fabulous conversation instantly about all this cool stuff. We walk out the door and he says, "You have to believe." And I said, "Yeah, okay, I got it. And he reaches out, he holds his hand out, and the apple appears, and he says, "You have to believe." And I said, "Whoa, I don't think I can do that." He said, "Exactly." And he walked away, never to be seen again. True story.
That's amazing. And it's yeah, because you want to, but yet the disbelief seems to sit there in its space. And it's a funny thing a bit when talking about all these rays. We want all these rays to work and we want all this magical thing to happen, but at the same time, there's a belief or something that sits in the way of the expansion. So it's both I guess what you said earlier, the intention and the attention, and paying attention to those as you're kind of, how do I create? What am I doing? What I'm doing? What is it that didn't work? What can I change and shift?
To a great extent, we're all educated by mom, dad, teacher, minister, who were educated by their mom, dad, teacher, minister. And there is a kind of a flow of this is how the life works. This is what 3D is. This is what the reality is. This is what you do. You do these things and you're expected. And if you could pause and say, is there another way? Now you're starting to begin here with these conversations, recognize, if I did this, I would not have that happen. Yes. And so the whole purpose when the archangelics brought mastering alchemy to the attention, they said, this is a path that's never been walked before. Not that people haven't ascended, because it happens all the time. But this one was, how do you say out loud to humanity, if you just look over here, you don't have to be angry and in doubt all the time. Here's a set of patterns, that codes, that if you align in well-being and laughter and joy and allow yourself to have it, you have a very different life than the one you've been leading. And so that's why level 1 starts out in mastering alchemy in a very comfortable way about, here, let me give you some things you never thought about, like this, the energetics around you and the wiring and I never heard that before. And then level 2 starting to be showing you how to redo the chakras and how to redo the eye of Horus in the head. All of a sudden it's like, wow, I didn't know any of this. You're right. You didn't know any of it because mom, dad didn't, teacher, minister didn't know it. And so you're being given an opportunity to step into a whole different framework that works if allowed.
Excellent. And that is the perfect note to end on, I think, right there. This has been a very fulfilling conversation and leaves so many possibilities and doors open for people to go explore. So thank you very much.
Great. Happy to be of help.
Thank you.